Now, we're going to discuss audit evidence. So, if you're going to define audit evidence, it's just an information obtained by the auditor in arriving at the conclusion. So, we have two types of audit evidence. It could be accounting data or corroborating information. Pag sinabi natin accounting data, ito yung mga books of accounts natin, accounting manuals, yung worksheets natin, and so on. So, pag sinabi natin corroborating information, yung other supporting information or supporting documents ng mga transactions natin. Example, invoices, sales invoice, bank statements, pagdating sa cash transaction, pagdating naman sa payable transaction, meron ba tayong mga purchase orders? So those are corroborating evidence or corroborating or supporting informations. So those are the two types of audit evidence. So, qualities of evidence. So, in qualities of evidence, we have two factors that we have to consider. First is sufficiency, and the other one is appropriateness. We'll begin with sufficiency. When we say sufficiency, it talks about the amount of evidence. Ilang evidence ba ang kailangan natin to suffice our conclusion? Okay, so it has factors to be considered also. So, first one is the competence of the evidence. May kinalaman siya kasi sa competence ng evidence. Example, the amount of evidence that is sufficient in a given situation varies inversely with the competence of evidence. So, therefore, the more competent the evidence, the less amount of evidence we are going to find, okay, or kukunin. Ayan. So, kapag competent na masyado yung evidence, hindi na natin kailangan maghanap pa ng mas maraming evidence kasi competent na yung nakuha natin. So, that's inversely related, okay? So, pagdating naman sa materiality of item, the more material the financial statement amount being examined, the more evidence will be needed to support its validity. So, conversely, if the amount is not material, then the auditor does not have to perform any procedure related to that account. Another factor is the risk involved to a particular account. The more riskier kasi, okay, of a particular account, the more evidence that we are going to find per account. So, directly proportional siya. And it also affects the experience gained during previous audit because it may indicate the amount of evidence taken before and whether such evidence was enough. So, kapag ikaw pa rin yung auditor nila ngayon at ikaw yung auditor last year, so, experience-wise, ano yung natutunan mo during the previous audits? Maybe, during the current audit, may mga hint ka na. If enough na ba itong evidence na kuha mo? Dito naman tayo sa appropriateness. When we say appropriateness, it talks about the measure of quality of evidence and its relevance and reliability. Take note, may tatlong key points tayo dito. First is the quality of evidence. Next one is the relevance. And the other one is reliability. So, appropriateness talks about quality of evidence. So, sa dalawa, relevance and reliability, relevance talks about timeliness. Timely pa ba yung information na nakuha natin? Is it usable? Or baka hindi na siya timely? Kasi kapag hindi na timely yung evidence na nakuha natin, hindi siya relevant doon sa forming of conclusion natin currently. So, pagdating naman sa reliability, it talks about objectivity of evidence. Ayan. So, audit evidence obtained from outside sources, for example. Ayan. Confirmation received from a third party, it is more reliable than generated internally. Diba? So, another example. Audit evidence generated internally is more reliable when the related accounting and internal control systems are effective. Ayan. Another example, audit evidence obtained directly by the auditor is more reliable than the obtained from the entity. So, yun yung appropriateness na sinasabi natin. Relevant ba siya at reliable ba siya? Mas reliable kapag galing kay auditor rather than galing kay entity. Ayan, baka maling information pa yung ibibigay sa atin ng entity or ng client natin. So another example, audit evidence in the form of documents and written representations is more reliable than oral representation. So that's appropriateness. Okay, so we are here on the audit documentation and working papers. So take note that all relevant evidences must be documented in working papers. Pero hindi lahat dapat i-document, okay? Only those relevant that will support our conclusion. Okay, so ganun siya. What are the functions of working papers? First one is working papers are prepared primarily to support the auditor's opinion. Okay? So, how can we support our opinion? Nagbigay tayo ng adverse, nag-disclaim tayo, nagbigay tayo ng qualified opinion. So, ano yung magiging supporting evidence natin? Yung working papers talaga natin as auditor. Okay, another function is to support the auditor's representation as to compliance with PSA. So, we are conducting our audit, okay, with the PSA and not with the other financial reporting standards. Another function is to assist the auditor in the planning, performance, review, and supervision of the engagement. So, lahat ng relevant informations andoon. Okay, so mag-a-assist talaga yun sa atin as auditor if ano ba yung gagawin natin. Kasi andun yung mga nag-gather nating information at saka evidence. Ayan, so secondarily, working papers also assist the auditor in planning future audits kasi meron ka ng itatago mo kasi yung working papers na yan. So, if ever the next audit naman na engagement, magagamit mo yan. So, meron ka ng idea. Hindi ka na mahihirapan i-audit yung another company, yung company na in-audit mo na last year. Another one, providing information that is useful in rendering other services. For example, MAS, or tax consultancy. Another one is providing adequate defense in case of litigation. So, in case kakasuhan ka ng client mo because binigyan mo sila ng ganitong opinion, so you have to defend yourself by using those working papers na nakalagay doon yung mga findings at saka evidence na nakuha mo during the course of the audit sa client mo. Okay. Classification of working papers. So, we classify two types of working papers. So, first one is permanent file. It contains information of continuing significance to the auditor in performing recurring audits. Example niyan is mga major contracts, permanent file yun. Engagement letter, ayan, organizational chart, copies of articles of incorporation, internal control analysis, ayan, and so on. Okay? So, pagdating naman sa current file, it contains evidence gathered and conclusion reached relevant to the audit of a particular year. Current lang talaga siya. This file would normally include copy of FS mo, current FS mo, audit program, working trial balance, lead schedules, detailed schedules, correspondence with other parties such as lawyers, customers, banks, and management. In addition lang sa working papers, although audit documentation is really required, but it depends upon the auditor's judgment, okay? But here are some or following important items that would normally require audit documentation. First one is discussions of significant matters with management and others on a timely basis. Kung ano man yung mga significant matters na discuss mo with the management, you must document it sa working papers mo para hindi mo makalimutan na ito yung sinabi nila. Or let's say, mas maganda talaga if may representation letter ka na nakuha coming from them. Okay, that they are getting this responsibility for this particular matter. So on and so forth. Another one, so dapat andoon din yung mga alternative procedures na ginawa ni auditor during the course of the audit. Kasi may mga times kasi, lalong-lalo na kapag nahihirapan yung auditor or the auditor find it uh, difficult to implement a particular type of procedure, so pwedeng gumawa naman si auditor ng alternative procedure. Pero dapat i-document yun sa working papers ninyo. Okay? And another one, in documenting the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures performed, the auditor should record who performed the audit, sino yung nag-perform ng audit, and the date of such work was completed, kailan natapos. Another one, who reviewed the audit work performed, sino ang nag-review, and the date and extent of such review. Ayan. So, ownership of working papers. Sino ba ang nagmamay-ari ng working papers? Siyempre, it's the property of the auditor. And the client has no right to the working papers prepared by the auditor. Working papers may sometimes serve as a reference source for the client. Siyempre, discretion mo yan as an auditor if pwede mo ba siyang ipagamit kay client as reference, but they should not be considered as part or as a substitute for the client's records. So, klaro tayo dyan. Kasi naman talaga, working papers are confidential in nature. So, although the working papers are personal property of the auditor, these working papers cannot be shown to third parties without the client's permission. So, even though na ikaw yung nagmamay-ari ng working papers, pero syempre, information yan coming from your client. So, hindi mo dapat basta-basta dinidisclose yung evidence mo sa third parties. Okay? So, Section 4 of the Philippine Code of Professional Ethics requires the CPA to respect confidentiality of information. Pero, ano yung instances wherein pwede siyang magamit ni auditor kahit walang permission ni client? So, magagamit lang yan or pwedeng i-disclose yung working papers ni auditor, okay, kahit walang permission ni client when? Okay, when the disclosure is required by law or when the working papers are subpoenaed by a court. Another one, when there is a professional right to disclose the information. When the auditor uses his working papers to defend himself when sued by the client for negligence.